Join us for another Electoral Road Show with analyst supremo Wayne Sussman and me, Chris Steyn. Welcome, Wayne.
Good morning, Chris. It was a very long night.
And it was a terrible night for the African National Congress, Wayne.
Yeah, one of the things which I was really pondering about was whether there'd be a post-G20 bounce for the ANC. Because obviously we've just hosted the G20 in Johannesburg. We saw many international dignitaries, heads of state, leading business people come to our shores this past weekend. I thought, yes, there was some drama with the United States of America and with Argentina, but I think South Africa did put its best foot forward. You saw Ramaphosa show himself as this real statesman, President Ramaphosa. And although when I looked at the 8 by-elections that were being contested, there wasn't one which stood out, which I thought there would be the perfect ward for the ANC. I thought its activists, its volunteers, its members of parliament would have a spring in their step when we came to this round of by-elections. And Chris, I can say from the outset, there was no post-G20 bounce for the ANC last night. Quite the contrary, it was quite a devastating night for the African National Congress. And I think we should start in Mandeni in northern KwaZulu-Natal, a coastal area where the Tugela River mouth is in the Lembe district. And one of the things we have been speaking about on the Electoral Road Show is the poor performance by Umkhonto Sizwe. And Chris, Umkhonto Sizwe found some of that lost magic last night, that magic we saw at the 2024 elections where they did so well. And they took a seat off the ANC. They won it dramatically. They won it with over 60% of the vote. The ANC falling from 65% to 30%. The IFP also declining from 17% to 9%. So of the 3 wards the ANC lost, I think this is the most significant one because, first of all, KwaZulu-Natal is the second most populous province in the country. This is the area of the country the ANC lost most of its support. And when we've seen Umkhonto Sizwe win wards or do well, it's generally been underwhelming relative to their 2024 performance. And yes, last night wasn't the 70% mark, but it was the 60% mark. And it's a convincing win for Umkhonto Sizwe. And I think that changes the narrative for them, and that would worry the ANC. So that is the first ward the ANC lost last night. And with your permission, I'm going to move to another one in a different part of the country. We're going to go, and we just spoke about the Tugela River mouth. We'll continue the river theme at an area of the country as the confluence of the Vaal and the Orange River, and that's the town of Douglas, and specifically in the area of Braaipal. And I want to go off on a quick tangent here. I follow politics around the world, and I know that urgency does get people off their backsides to go out and vote. And I was watching the ANC's campaign, and I rate Premier Zamani Saul very highly, the Premier of the Northern Cape. But what was coming out of their social media feeds and out of their press releases yesterday was this language of victory is certain. Well, victory was certainly not certain in Douglas yesterday, as the ANC suffered a shock defeat. And here, the ward was won by an independent. And this is a dramatic result. The independent won 47% of the vote. I'm going to get into this just now. I'll get into it now. Essentially, what happened in 2021 was it was too late for a local party to get together, but there was a loose grouping of independents. They used the same color, even though they didn't run under a political party name. They ran under the same color. They called themselves the independents. And the candidate who won here is linked to that grouping. So he won last night with 47% of the vote. The ANC's vote share falling from 56% to 25%, 56% to 25%. And just by the way, the reason for this by-election was that the ANC ward councillor defected to the Patriotic Alliance. Now, he ran for the Patriotic Alliance. The Patriotic Alliance, not traditionally strong. Yeah, they got 19% of the vote, but I think that's a mixed result because they were fielding the current councillor. The DA also falling dramatically from 22% to 7%. But here, and I said this a few minutes ago, the ANC was saying victory is certain. Well, they fell very much short. And when we go through the ramifications of the councils later, you'll see what it means here. This is a stunning upset in Douglas yesterday. And then finally, we move to the Eastern Cape to see the third ward, which the ANC lost yesterday. And that was in the Langkloof area near the Kou-Kamma mountain range, honey bush tea country. And this was in Louterwater. Now, the PA won a ward here in September off the ANC. They've won another award off the ANC in the Kou-Kamma municipality, very rural part of the Eastern Cape. And essentially, if you look at the vote share, the PA getting in with 44% of the vote, up from 7%, and the ANC falling from 49% to 42%. So the ANC's fall is gradual here. The DA really had their lunch eaten by the PA, particularly in Louterwater, where most of the voters are. They fell from 35% to 14%. But while the DA lost ground to the PA, it's the PA who walks away with the ward, the PA who walks away with the second successive ward in Kou-Kamma, and they'll be delighted. So we in just to round off this segment, losses for the ANC in the Eastern Cape, losses for the ANC in the Northern Cape, and losses for the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal.
Robertson, a small town in the middle of nowhere where a wine farmer claims to have sold a Volkswagen up to We Buy Cars.
A farmer.
What car did you really sell them?
A VW.
Right here in Robertson.
Small town, but we know about We Buy Cars.
Yeah, but what's a farmer doing with a VW up?
It was just a runaround.
Cool cover story. And I see you traded it in for this, like a double cab Benay. Were they all out of ranges?
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Now, Wayne, not only did they lose 3 wards, but they also did poorly in some others. Would you mind taking us through those, please?
Correct, Chris. And as we enter the local government election year, this is important because it's not always, yes, ward changes, seat changes have great consequence for local government, local representation, but parties, particularly at this time of the year, pay close attention to swings away from it or to it. Well, we'll start in Johannesburg. It was a very safe seat, but often when we have a safe DA seat, often when we have seats with only 2 parties, there is there's a decent probability that both parties will grow because in the previous election, there were many parties in the ballot. Only 2 parties here. And just to remind the business viewers, this Ward 19 Johannesburg is Hyde Park and Parkmore and Sandhurst. Yes, President Ramaphosa might not vote here, but he lives here. Well, the DA went up from 70% to 97%. They won 97% in all 4 voting districts. The ANC, despite there only being 2 parties in the ballot, fell from 11% to 3%. They didn't feature. I mean, I wonder why they even ran in this by-election. And yes, it's a safe DA seat, but the DA are now saying, look, we only got 70% last time. We got 97% this time. This will spur Helen Zille on. And this was the first, again, a predictable result, but I don't think the ANC thought they would do that poorly. But here I'm going to now move to an alarming statistic, because we're going from Hyde Park and Sandhurst to real ANC heartland in Gauteng. And that is Khutsong, near a township near Carltonville on the northwest border, strong Setswana-speaking area, gold mining country in the Middlepos municipality. The ANC in 2021 won over 75% of the vote. They won 76% of the vote in 2021. In the by-election, they fell to 49% of the vote, winning less than half of the vote in this by-election. So who ate their lunch? The EFF, this was their only good result of the night. They grew from 9% to 20%. The EFF will be encouraged by that. They have more than doubled their percentage support in that ward. And then Action SA, if you remember a few weeks ago, they won an election in rural Northwest, of course, the Setswana-speaking area. But here we see a continuation of the theme of Action SA doing well in areas where Setswana is the dominant language. And they got 16% of the vote. I believe Herman Mashaba and Michael Beaumont will be over the moon with their third place finish. They haven't really contested strongly. They didn't contest Mirafong in 2021, barely featured in 2024. And here they came third with 16%. You also saw Umkhonto Sizwe winning 10%. So you're seeing that ANC vote spread in many directions. So that is a worrying result. We then move back to the Eastern Cape. And now we are going to look at a ward called in the Jeffreys Bay area, in an area called Pellsrus. And here the DA held the seat. They held it well. This is in the Kou-Kamma municipality. They had to win the seat to retain its outright majority. But I just want to make sure I get the numbers exactly correctly for you, Chris. And essentially, the DA held its support, 47%, down 1 percentage point from 48%. The PA really ate. So here again, we had a DA ward councillor defect to the Patriotic Alliance. Okay. So we expected the PA to hurt the DA. They didn't hurt the DA, but they hurt the ANC. The PA grew from 5% to 27% of the vote to finish second. The ANC have always been 1 or 2 in this ward. So the ANC is no longer even second. When we break down the results here, the PA are winning in Pellsrus, the predominantly coloured area. This is an area which the ANC won last time, and the ANC really struggling in this part of Pellsrus. And also in its heartland area of Toko Sexwali, the ANC not doing as well. The ANC falling from 44% to 25%. That is a big drop in the Kou-Kamma municipality in the town of Jeffreys Bay in the Eastern Cape. Another big slide for the ANC. And then finally, and this result caught me by surprise, we know that in the town of Makana, formerly Grahamstown, the ANC have been rock solid, but the municipality has been plagued by dysfunctionality. And we go to the area of Fingo and another area called Tanchi. This is where Judge Lex Mpati comes from, the former well-known judge in South Africa. And the ANC falling from 67% to 50% of the vote. 50% of the vote in a traditional ANC stronghold, a year out from the local government elections in the Eastern Cape province, week in, week out. We speak how rock solid the ANC is in the Eastern Cape. Well, if they are falling from 67% to 50% in an area like Fingo, that is concerning. And here, the DA were the big winners. From 1% of the vote to 26% of the vote, the DA showing massive growth in an area which is certainly not a traditional DA area. The DA will be very, very happy about that result. So what we have seen here is a continuation of the theme of the ANC finding a lot of electoral difficulties in the latest round of by-elections. Just to review, 2 in Gauteng and 2 in the Eastern Cape.
But it did manage to hold on to its support in one ward.
Yeah, this is one of the most interesting wards in the country. Well, there are very few voters in this part of the country. It's the Hantam Korua in the town of Middlepos, where Jeffrey Sher,
Anthony.
Where Anthony Sher, the famous, I'm sorry to Jeffrey Sher, and even bigger apology to Anthony Sher, the great writer, comes from. So very few people here, 12 voting districts. Across those 12 voting districts, the average vote per ward, I think I counted early this morning, was 57, 58. So not many voters, but it's still an important result for the ANC. They got 42% of the vote, slightly down from 46%. It's not a big shift. Their support holding. This is the one result when you look across the board last night where the ANC will say, what did we do right here? They fielded a very young candidate in this by-election. The DA growing from 33% to 36%, and the PA beating the Freedom Front for third place with 12%. So this is the only bright spot, I believe, even though they had a slight decline for the ANC in a very rough night of by-elections, Chris.
Going forward, Wayne, what are the coalition options for the ANC?
So let's start with the easiest. If we go to Mandeni, and again, the ANC have now lost 2 successive wards to MK in the Mandeni area. The ANC had 18 out of 35 seats. This is a smart audience. They now only have 17 out of 35 seats. So they could easily do a deal with their Government of National Unity partners, the IFP, who have 10 seats, or the DA, who have 1 seat to get them over the line. I think that's unlikely. They work in a number of metropolitan areas of the EFF, but there's a small party from the Eastern Cape, the African Independent Congress, which is only 1 seat, a party which is struggling. I don't think a party which is going to be too difficult at the negotiation table. They've worked with the AIC in Johannesburg. They work with the AIC in Nelson Mandela Bay, some other Gauteng municipalities. I think that's what the ANC is going to do. And the AIC will get probably some posting in return. But I don't think the ANC are sweating. They'll be disappointed that in a traditional stronghold like Mandeni, they've lost the outright majority. But that's the one they will sweat the least about. We go now to Douglas, and this is more complicated because the ANC plus the EFF had 7 out of 13 seats. The ANC had 6 seats. The ANC now only has 5 seats. So what happened in 2021, Chris, is that the independents and the DA and the Freedom Front, with the support of the EFF, governed here. If I do the math, the DA has 4 seats, the independents have 2 seats, and the Freedom Front have 1 seat. That gives you 7 out of 13. Now, what the ANC and the EFF will try to scupper is, can we break the independents apart? Now, as I said, the independents are not like other independents. They are an informal grouping. They run under the same, literally, I think, I'm not so good on colors. It's a beige color, is their color of their signage. If the independents stay together, I believe the ANC and the EFF will lose power in Douglas. I imagine one of the independents will come as mayor. But as I've said, it's easier said than done in keeping an independent grouping together. But the ANC will be worried here. Then we go to Kou-Kamma in the Karedo area, the Langkloof area. So going into this round of by-elections, the council is already hung. What do I mean by that? There are 12 seats. That's an even number of seats. And the ANC, because as I said, in September, they lost a seat to the PA. The ANC didn't make changes to its government because the council was hung, because they had 6 out of the 12 seats. You couldn't vote the ANC out because the council was hung. So now they have a bit of a problem because 4 plus 1, as I said, they work with the independent, is 5 seats, 5 out of 12. The kingmakers here are Gauteng Mackenzie's Patriotic Alliance. And Gauteng Mackenzie, we know that he works well with the ANC across the country. He poured a lot of credit, sent a lot of credit to President Ramaphosa's way over the running of the G20. But I think the PA are in a position now, they're on 3 out of the 12 seats. Say, look, ANC, you give us the mayoral chain, or we can do a deal with the DA, who have also 3 seats, and the Freedom Front, which has 1 seat. That'll give them 7 out of 12. So the PA are the real kingmakers in Kou-Kamma, and they will determine whether the ANC continues to lead that municipality or whether the PA works with the DA and the Freedom Front.
Well, in conclusion, Wayne.
The ANC will have to go back to the drawing board. This was a very, very poor night for them. And look, it's amazing how 72 hours can change a lot. President Ramaphosa springing his step. That Spring in the Step is not going to be active in Luthuli House. There'll be no Spring in the Step in Luthuli House today. Our next round of by-elections, we move to Ekurhuleni, which is a metropolitan area where I believe the ANC can do well. And that'll be key because we know that they've had struggles in Gauteng and they've had a tricky assignment in the Western Cape. So we are nearing the end of the by-election year, but the ANC would have wanted this year to end sooner.
Thank you. That was elections analyst Wayne Sussman on the Electoral Road Show with me, Chris Steyn. Thank you, Wayne.